Hi, good day, everyone. I'm Professor Sharinyana Bascao-Cadilena, and this is our first lecture for understanding the self. So, I know that you have a lot of questions about yourself and maybe in understanding other people as well. So, bakit kayo nagkakaiba and in what aspect? There are also undescribable feeling towards other people wherein you feel na kahit bagong kakilala lang natin sila is you feel comfortable na. There are also some na kahit walang ginagawa or hindi nyo sila personally kakilala meron kayong mga negative feelings towards them. So I hope that this subject will actually give you some answers to your questions because this is a discovery again of yourself and maybe also a discovery on how you will be able to open yourselves in understanding other selves as well. And this is a great avenue to help you with your self development and self realizations. The first topic that we have for this subject or this course is the philosophical self. And it may sound very historical or philosophical in a sense na parang boring siya. But really, this is something that is very, very vital in knowing yourself. And different perspectives from the philosophy of people who have been part of the history in understanding the self. And now this is the best time for us to discuss this information so you can know yourselves better as part of the philosophical perspective. And so let me just present you. So this will be something that we will also continue to discuss when we have our synchronous class. And I do hope that you'll find it very interesting, very intriguing, and yet you want to discover more about it and explore more about yourself. Here, the philosophical self. Now, the self from various perspectives. Let's just go to the basics first. The philosophy of self. It refers to the conditions of the identity that makes individual distinct from all others. This is what makes you unique. And this also helps you identify by means of knowing your qualities, characteristics, beliefs, values, customs, and etc. So that makes a person or a group of unique individual for that specific individual to be unique from one another. So ito yung makes you you, uniquely you, and and that yourself is responsible for the thoughts and actions to which it was also set by you. And this concept of self may also be examined in five different ways. And if you can relate this to the philosophical perspective of the people and the ideologies and the philosophies that we will discuss, makikita ninyo yung relation nila into these five concept of self. That's the learning outcomes. We'll discuss that also. Let me question you first. Why is there a need to understand the philosophical self? So, ano yung kinalaman nitong philosophical self in really knowing your true self? I will be asking you that for the synchronous class. As I've mentioned, this philosophy of self to the conditions of identity that make the individual distinct from all others. So naririnig ninyo, familiar kayo with the term identity. But how will you be able to identify yourself as a unique individual in comparison from others? Or you as an individual, unique individual, as part of the society? Let's begin it with this first concept, which is the self knowledge. Now, self knowledge refers to one's knowledge and understanding of one's own learning, characters, motivations, and capabilities. And itong self knowledge na to, it may also be something na naririnig ninyo as self concept, and this may be the mental representations of oneself. Either it may be the stable characteristics of a person, or it may also be the dynamic characteristics of a person. And ito yung mga part ng mga belief system natin, yung mga values na meron ng isang tao, and ito yung mga part ng pagkakakilala ninyo sa sarili ninyo. It will also be based on the cognitive, the affective, and the executive concept of self. So, pinanggagalingan nito is of course the cognitive, which is again, it comes from what you know about yourself. And also yung affective natin and executive natin na tinatawag is more of the emotions or or the behavior of a person. And this will be further discussed kasi itatanong ko sa inyo, i-elaborate natin kung ano tong self-knowledge na tinatawag natin. We then go to the second concept of self, that is self-activity. Self-activity naman is defined as an independent and self-determined action of one person. Ito yung quality or state of being self-active or when it comes to your self-action. A person's decisions to carry out the actions of which you have thought about yourself and not been told to do by others. So this is not forced for you to act that way, or the things you do because of whatever it is that you know it's part of yourself. So that can be referred to as your self activity. It infers motion or the power of moving oneself without the help or aid of the external meaning other people or external factors within your environment. It is something na hindi ka lang basta nagko-conform. Ito din yung isa na pwede natin sabihin that a person becomes active or directed from an action because again, this is something na ginugusto ninyo na gawin, and it is the basis of all learnings. So bakit natin masasabi na itong self-activity is the basis of all learnings? So, i-elaborate din natin yan for our synchronous class. Let's proceed to the third concept, self-concept, which is the self-independent of the senses. From the term independent of the senses. So it goes beyond the senses. Yung seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling. So hindi lang siya base sa mga sensory organs natin or sa senses natin for you to be able to know yourself. So this is popularly known to be the inner self. And it is maintaining a person as a separate or self contained individual. It focuses on the internal attributes like your abilities, more of your natural intelligence, not the intelligence that is being acquired, but something that is natural. It comes out naturally. And it is also related to a person's sense of worth and self esteem. And it helps you to strive to achieve your goals in life. So, when we speak of self independent of senses, this is more of something na, again, it it lies within you. So imagine, and we'll be discussing this ha, yung people who are imprisoned. So anong kinalaman niyang, bakit siya magandang example when we speak of self-independent of senses? Discuss natin yan sa synchronous natin. And well, when we speak of also self-independent of senses, your idea of self is not something that is logically dependent or something that is parang physical thing siya. It allows you to believe that there is a soul. So itong soul na to, it is not being seen as relative to whatever you are experiencing or what you can consider as yourself, but it is a primary given that is part of you knowing thyself. So titingnan again natin yan during our discussion what it really meant. We then now go to self-identity. So the self-identity is the particular characteristics of the self that determines individuals' uniqueness among others. It is the recognition of one's potential and the qualities as an individual. So as you yourself being an independent but being an individual, uh, it is also the awareness of your own individual identity. So, mga specific example nito when we speak of self-identity is because you know your gender identity, whether also you can see your identity, di ba? Pag you have your ID cards, that's personal, that's just you. It's the ID represents you as an individual with the uniqueness of you being you amongst others. And it is also part of your social identity. How can we identify you among others from the crowd or from the community? So, ano pa yung mas pwede natin ma-discuss when we speak of self-identity? So be ready for the questions also that I will be asking you. Now, let's go to self image. Self image is a mental picture of an individual and is quite resistant to change through time regarding one's abilities, personality, and role. Itong self image na to, if you have time now, punta ka sa mirror. And definitely, you can see an image of you. But of course, we're not speaking here just merely with a physical aspect of you as being shown by the mirror or being reflected by the mirror. But when we speak of this self image, this is how you see yourself and feels about your own personality, your achievements, and the values you have in life. Example natin, pero magbibigay pa tayo ng example sa synchronous. If a person sees that she is beautiful or smart, so definitely the mental picture that she sees within herself is about himself at the present, at the past and the present. So when we speak of this you being smart or beautiful, so we're pertaining here kung ano ka before and ano ka ngayon. And that is the continuous self-image that you would want to believe for yourself. Kasi nga, ito yung pwede natin tawagin na internal dictionary. It may be based on what again the experiences you've had in life, the feedback you got from your loved ones or your friends. So, ito yung more na medyo idealistic and realistic. It depends on the person who will create this self-image. How you will be able to create that self-image of yours. What you want yourself to believe as your true self. And it's again based on your mental picture of how you see yourself. Maganda rin na i-discuss natin to at this moment. Ano yung paningin ninyo sa sarili ninyo? Elaborate natin yan for our synchronous class. So those are just the five concepts of self, and these are the terms that you may go back to, and if you have some things na you would want to reflect upon yourself, this is the best five concepts or the concept of yourself that you can go back to. Next, then now proceed to the topics or the main topics, which is the Eastern philosophy of self, and later on the Western philosophy of self. Now, why are they different from each other? So, ang Eastern philosophy of self, you might have heard again about this specific Eastern philosophies, but let's again go to the things that we have to know first about Eastern philosophy. When we speak of Eastern philosophies, it out of the self, it encompasses all views of the self that emanated from Asian continent, postulated by thinkers from this region. So itong Eastern philosophy na to, knowing the people or the culture about Eastern people is that they strongly believe that everything is related to religion, or most of what is happening is related to religion. So, of course, if that's the belief, definitely yourself has something to do with your religion. And again, tignan natin, isa-isahin natin tong three Eastern philosophies that you can relate to for yourself. So, ang first natin is the Hindu self. When we speak of the Hindu philosophy of self, well, if alam ninyo yung Hindu or Hinduism, ito yung oldest religion in the world. And this is also the third largest religion. So, yung first, well, yung Catholic, and second is the Islamic or the Muslim. Ang Hinduism naman, it started from the people that were known as Aryans. Okay? So, ang mga Hinduism or sa Hinduism, they believe that the goal of a man is to have knowledge of the true or of its true identity. And bakit nasimulan ng Hinduism yung ganitong perspective? Well, Hindu believe that self is made up of two aspects. That is the Atman, which is the self soul, and it means essence, breath, or soul, and it also means as the real self of the individual. So this is the innermost and essence of the soul of the person. And itong Hinduism na meron tayo, it is, again, since it is more of what we call Atman, Atman for them is eternal, okay, imperishable, and it is beyond times. It is different yourself, or your it has this specific concept that it is different from the body or the mind or the consciousness of a person. And it is accepted as the spiritual self concept of the Hindus, according to Dalal 2010. And ang Atman is the true self that lies at the inner core of human identities. So it is the only inner core that is identical with God. So you see that again in relation to the Eastern philosophies. So it has something to do with their God. The self identity of a person can be compared to that of an onion with various layers. If alam naman ninyo ang sibuyas. So ang sibuyas, pag binalatan ninyo, makikita nyo na meron pa rin siyang certain layers sa loob. So ganun daw yung isang tao. That is what composes oneself. So with these different layers, we have the outer layer, that is our identities, or that are or those are our identities, and it involves common sense of the views of ourselves that we experience. So because of these experiences that we have, it composes na yung tinatawag nga na identity, but it is more of just the outer layer. Ito lang yung madaling makita. Then we now have this what we call the inner layer. So, yung inner layer na tinatawag for the Hindu philosophy, it involves the self-God within each of us and sees the underlying unity of the world. So, ang self mo, hindi lang siya pang self mo. For Hindu philosophy, it's because you are part of the world, and therefore there should be unity of the world with you being part of it. And ang magandang explanation din na makikita natin dito pag sinasabi natin ang Hindu philosophy, kasi kilala sila itong term na to na tinatawag na karma. No? Itong karma na to, it is the good or bad outcomes of your actions. And because of this karma, ito na yung quotation na kilala natin lahat or naririnig natin lahat, that what goes around comes around. Very, very common siyang sinasabi madalas ng mga matatanda or mga elders or mga adults na kakilala natin. What goes around comes around. So, kung ano yung pinatranscend mo as your actions, whatever it is na pinapakita mo sa ibang tao or sa mundo, siyang babalik sa'yo. And itong konsepto na to is more ng bumabalik lang sa'yo kung ano yung binibigay mo or pinapakita mo sa iba as part of yourself. And naniniwala din ang Hinduism or ang Hindu philosophy natin sa what we call reincarnation. This reincarnation, alam niyo naman to, no, na if there's life after death, but that life after death is you being reborn. No? The concept is that the Atman, which is again the soul, is just there. And if your body will have to leave this world, o kung mamamatay ang isang tao, the Atman will still remain. And it will just be on another form. And that is what we call reincarnation. But definitely, you may not have the entire you cannot really remember your past life, but still, you being in another form, your past life is still part of your present life. And it will just be continuously be something na reincarnate yung form reincarnate yung form ninyo, but the same soul. You will have a new form kapag namamatay ang isang tao. Pwedeng lalaki ka noon, tapos babae ka ngayon. Or pwedeng meron kang kakulangan before, but now you're very, very well, and you're famous, and you're healthy. So, yun yung mga konsepto na meron kapag reincarnation. So, continuous lang siya. You will be reincarnated until you reach the nirvana. So, itong nirvana na tinatawag natin is the existence or experience beyond normal or physical level. I cannot tell you fully how you will be able to reach that nirvana. But for Hindu philosophy, there is this something na yung existence mo, no, based on the experiences that you have, on your life or on your present self, it if you have reached beyond that normal or physical level, then you will have this what they call nirvana. And balik tayo dun sa previous slide. Yung Atman is again yung soul or the true self of a person. That's the inner core of the human identity. But we also have what we call Brahman. Now, when we speak of Brahman, it connotes to the highest universal principle, the ultimate reality in the universe. And in major schools of Hindu philosophy, this is the material, efficient, formal, and final cost of all that exists. It is the pervasive, genderless, infinite, eternal truth and bliss which does not change, but it is cause of all changes. So, Brahman as a metaphysical concept of the single bonding unity behind diversity in all that exists in the universe. So, closely related siya dun sa tinatawag nga natin na nirvana. In order for you to reach that sense of transcendence, and that transcendence that we are pertaining to is again for you to be able to know and experience the existence beyond the normal or physical level of experiences and existence. And yung samsara nga na, yung reincarnation na tinatawag natin as what we have mentioned a while ago, it is popularly known in Hinduism or in Hindus, yung samsara, that life after death. It's just an endless cycle of life. Even though death is something na inevitable, but there will always be life after death. And that is another life. Yun yung concept natin when we speak of the Hindu philosophy. So, elaborate natin yan. And if you have questions, we'll surely try to answer those. Then we go to the second uh, Eastern philosophy, and that is the Buddhist philosophy of self. I know you're familiar with the with Buddha. No? Meron kantang Buddha, but Buddha is the well Buddha, the founder of Buddhism is Siddhartha Gautama, and he is known as Buddha. Buddha's teaching of self is to understand the nature of self, which is a combination of the five aggregates of existence known as the five skandhas or the five gifts. But let's first again go to Buddha. In Buddhism, life they believe is unavoidably misery. It's full of miseries, and unavoidable. And if maiisip ninyo yung concept ng tinuturo sa Buddhism, really simplicity in life. Simplicity of life. And Buddha as the image of Buddhism, it you can sense na it's a cheerful display. Makikita ninyo yung nakatawa si Buddha and medyo stout siya, no? Medyo malaman si Buddha kasi naniniwala ang Buddhism or ang mga Buddhist na you just have to be simple. But yet, although you are expecting that life is full of miseries, you still have to continue living, but with simplicity. And with all the wellness that one can have, it will not define happiness. That is for Buddhism. And yung ganitong perspective nila, no, yung mga Buddhist, kaya makikita ninyo sila na nakasuot lang ng mga very simple clothes that speaks na they are very grounded, that they really believe in their religion, which is Buddhism, because they have the beads when they walk, and really I have a professor who is very, very influential in my life, and I know that he is a Buddhist. No? And yung pinakamagandang experience ko during my college is because of the teachings from that professor of mine. And very, very grounded yung mga simple, yung mga Buddhist. And it's because again of the teachings of Buddha that they strongly follow and they strongly believe. Yeah. Go back tayo dun sa five skandhas or five hips na kung tawagin. Ang tao daw ay kinocompose ng five na to. First is yung form, which is yung physical form mo, yung pagkakabuo mo bilang tao. And then, we have what we call sensation. When we speak of sensation, ito naman yung mga five senses. Of course, definitely what makes up your feelings. And yung ang konsepto nitong sensation na to is both the physical and the emotional part of you. So, yung mga touching, hearing, tasting, smelling, but also again with your emotions also. The third skanda is the perception. Perception, it takes in most of what we call thinking. And pag sinabi natin yung thinking, of course, nandun na kasama na yung conceptualization, yung cognition, yung reasoning natin, mga logic, analysis na ginagawa natin. So, part na siya ng perception. And this includes also the recognition that occurs when an organ comes into contact with an object. So again, if yung mga na-experience natin with the use of the sensation and with our physical form, tapos sa experiences na nagkakaroon tayo, nabubuo yung perception natin. And through this perception that we have, that we can identify, it makes our identity something that can be defined. The object perceived may be physical object or mental one such as an idea. So dahil nga sa mga perceptions na meron tayo based on the experiences that we have na feel ng ating form and naramdaman ng ating senses, ito na ngayon yung nagbumubuo na idea natin, yung perception natin sa isang bagay. Ang ang bata, nalalaman niya kung ano ang isang bahay through experience. Kapag may mga natututunan tayo sa buhay na we really cannot fully know that specific perspective or object unless you have touched that object. And that makes you having this perception. Then let's go to the fourth skanda, which is the mental formation. When we speak of mental formations, it includes now the habits, prejudices, and predisposition, human volition, attention, faith, consciousness, pride, desire, vindictiveness, virtues, and non-virtues. So, makikita mo na hindi lang siya something, again, palalim na tayo ng palalim as we have these five skandhas. Nagsimula siya sa outer, napunta sa sensation. Form is again the physical, then the sensation comes next, and then you have the perception. Once you have perceptions, then you are now ready to also form your develop your mental formation. And through this mental formation, this is something na because of maybe the repetitive experiences, the repetitive actions that composes your mental formations, nagiging madalas na natural na lang yung reaction natin sa isang bagay because na-form na siya sa ating pag-iisip. And yun na yung nagsisimula na because of this whatever na develop sa form, sensation, perception, and then nag-translate na siya as your mental formation, nagiging innate na lang sa isang tao to to act or behave that way as part of him or herself. Then, lastly, the fifth skanda is the consciousness. So when we speak of the consciousness, it is the awareness or sensitivity to an object, but without conceptualization. So, yung consciousness or kamalayan na tinatawag natin, ito yung something na hindi kinakailangan ng conceptualization. It is just part of your consciousness, yung kamalayan mo na dahil sa uh, other four skandhas, no, yung pinakamalalim is the consciousness. Because if it has been part of your consciousness, that is more na nagiging part na siya ng sarili mo without you really conceptualizing or thinking about something that you have to do. Because again, that is you already. Na-reach mo na yung pinakamalalim na skanda, which is the consciousness. And if it's already part of your consciousness, then it is also something that is deeply part of you. There is nothing for Buddhist philosophy kasi. Well, again, yung kinuwento nga natin about Buddhism, naniniwala ang Buddhism o yung mga naniniwala sa Buddhism, sa turo ni Buddha, that there is nothing permanent now in this world but change. Nagsimula, yung konsepto na yun ay nagmula sa Buddhist teaching, ang Buddhist philosophy or Buddha's teaching. There is nothing permanent but change. So, dahil itong change na tinatawag nito, kaya uh, despite ng mga miseries and unavoidable na mga maybe bad things na meron ng buhay, ang mga Buddhists, naniniwala naman sila na change is something that is constant. So you need to take actions in order for you to attain uh, that self na gusto mo na magkaroon or maisabuhay. And naniniwala din ang Buddhism sa tinatawag natin na nirvana or yung pagkakaisa-isa ng itong five skandhas na to. If napanood niyo si Doctor Strange, paano yung transcendence na ginagawa ni Doctor Strange when he went to that to that Buddhist temple. Yeah, sana balikan ninyo yung recollection ninyo on that movie because it is also a good example how a person will achieve that transcendence or that nirvana na kilala nga yung mga Buddhists. So paano naging powerful si Doctor Strange sa movie na yon? Discuss natin yun sa synchronous class. And makita ninyo yung pagkakaiba. But again, yung influence ng religion, really, dun sa philosophy ng mga Eastern countries, ay talagang malaki ang role ng religion or ng faith. Let's go to the third one and the last philosophy for Eastern that we will be discussing. So, we have the philosophy. Ang Confucianism naman, dito nagmula yung Confucian view na tinatawag natin is that for the human adult self, it is defined as achieved state of moral excellence rather than a given human condition, and that there are several implications to such an understanding. Ang gustong ma-attain sa Confucianism is that moral excellence. And itong moral excellence na to, the predominant theme in this philosophy is actually anchored on finding an understanding for true becoming.
So ano yung kaya mong maging? Paano mo ma-reach yung moral excellence na yon? Kaya mong gumawa ng action for you to attain that moral excellence. Kilala ang Confucianism saan? Sa Golden Rule. Ang Confucianism, kilala to, tatanungin ko din sa inyo kung ano tong Golden Rule na to. And then we will explain why. In essence, in the human condition, so at birth daw, in Confucianism, it is not to be confused with that being of a tabula rasa. Naku, yung medyo na-spoil na sa Western philosophy, itong tabula rasa from John Locke, upon which our experience write what will become the individual personality, according to Land of 2005. So, magkaiba sila ng paniniwala sa Confucian philosophy. And as part nga ng human adult self natin sa na binanggit kanina, for you to achieve that moral excellence, there are also some things na pwedeng mag-implicate to you achieving that moral excellence. First, one may speak of a human being. Uh, so, sorry, yung one may speak of human being in Confucianism only such with regard to the human potential to become a human being. So, sa madaling salita, at birth daw, being human is no different from being an animal. Bakit? Tatanungin ko kayo niyan. Bakit sinabi sa Confucianism at birth, being human is no different from being an animal? Ano ba kayo ng baby? Ano ba ang isang tao kapag bata or sanggol? Sige, i-discuss natin po yan. And now, the true human condition is achieved in life. If needed, it is being achieved through the practice of virtues. Kaya tayo may tinatag, fill in the blanks to ha. Practice makes not perfect, but practice makes permanent. So, dahil nga sa every day, if you're trying to practice uh, a behavior or a character or a virtue, something na action na ginagawa mo, whether it's good or bad. Well, if it's good, itong pagpa-practice mo for you being or acquiring that specific virtue, magiging permanent na siya sa'yo. Then, tsaka natin siya matatawag as virtue because of that repetitive action, repetitive behavior, and finally, it becomes your virtue. Yung action na yon, whether na sino man ang tao na kaharap mo, ano man ang sitwasyon, nasaan ka mang lugar, if it already has been your virtue, it will again come out naturally. While these virtues are almost impossible to be achieved, the concept of self in Confucianism is closely linked with all other areas or with all those areas that the virtues stand for. Nabubuhay tayo para maging mabuti sa ibang tao. Madalas, yun ang gustong iparating pag Confucianism. Kaya po tayo naniniwala sa Golden Rule. And again, pupunta tayo, babalik na naman tayo sa konsepto, no? Malaki ang role ng religion para sa mga sinaunang nabuhay dahil nga ito yung bumubuo o naguhulma sa kaisipan and sa pag-uugali ng mga tao based sa teachings ng religion. And up until now, marami pa rin ang nabubuhay or marami pa rin tao ang napakalakas ng impluensya, lalo na kapag religion ang pinag-uusapan. And in Confucianism, the quest for human self, the search for what it is to be human in terms of spirit or body, does not exist. So, si Confucianism nga, hindi siya naniniwala yung dualism na pinaniniwalaan na may na may soul at saka may body. Hindi ganun yung pag-iisip niya. But because nga of you choosing whatever it is that you would want to become, and that is again you achieving that moral excellence, yun yung main na pagbuo ng pagiging ikaw. And with this, Confucius, that is that of personality. Nabuo na din yung concept of personality. So this personality as such is not seen as inherently existing, but as something that is being formed through upbringing and environment. Yan ang sinasabi din ng ibang mga, hindi lang naman Confucianism or hindi lang naman yung mga sa Confucianism naniniwala na sa larangan na ganito, no? But upbringing and external factors such as the environment that we live in really has something to do with one's personality. Definitely. And in that sense, the human being is seen as a social being. Bakit nga ba social being? Tatanungin ko po ulit kayo. Accordingly, every person is born with four beginnings. So kung meron tayo sa Hinduism na Atman Brahman and sa Buddhist philosophy is the five skandhas or five hips, sa Confucianism may tinatawag din tayo na four beginnings. And itong four beginnings na to, it it doesn't encapsulate a concept of self as yet because this is something na it is innate already in within us as we are born. But which together, if we put that into if gusto natin mas maintindihan to, no, kung sa konsepto ng Western, ito yung tinatawag na pre-self or the potential self. First is that we as a person, we already have this heart of compassion. Ang heart of compassion is related to sympathy. We're sympathetic. And if yung heart of compassion na yon, as again, you grow, you develop, you mature, and with the practice of virtue, it will lead to Jen. So this is the term used in Confucianism pertaining to the heart of compassion. Then we also have what we call the heart of righteousness. Yung heart of righteousness na yon, it is a virtue. Yung righteousness is a virtue of being morally right, believing and acting right, morally right or morally good. And it leads to ye. So yung y leads to ye. When we say naman heart of propriety. So propriety is more of the appropriate behavior. Kaya alam natin sa mga bagay-bagay, sa mga lugar-lugar, meron tayong mga specific na appropriate behavior na. So pag nag-example ng bata ka, 'di ba, nakikita mo yung magulang mo may kausap na iba, hindi ka pwedeng sisingit basta kasi hindi siya yung appropriate behavior. Hindi siya yung something na basta hindi rin to yung konsepto na manners lang or etiquette. No, but yung heart of propriety is whatever it is that is appropriate for you as an individual to do. So, may mga, and it leads to Lee. Ako magbibigay sana ako ng example. But, sige, bigay ko ng example but we will discuss this also sa synchronous natin. Now, yung heart of propriety, for example ka, and may mga pagkakataon sa buhay na nakikita mo na may mga pulubi and ikaw meron kang kakainin na pagkain na alam mo may sobra or kahit na hindi sobra. But if your heart of propriety will take lead to your to you and behave or have an action in order for you to follow your heart of propriety, then definitely magbibigay ka. Kasi alam mo, that's the appropriate action that you have to make because of your heart of propriety. That will lead you to Li. L-I. Li. And then we have this heart of wisdom. So yung heart of wisdom ng isang tao na meron daw tayo since we are born, it's a state of course wisdom, so being wise. May kakayahan ng isang tao na mag-isip, maging matalino, hindi lang sa pag-aaral, no, pero matalino sa pag-iisip kung ano yung mga dapat gawin on a certain given situation, leading you to what we call chi, CHIH, chi. So if you are again practicing this specific behavior and magiging part na siya ng personality mo because of the repetitive actions that you are doing to show your heart of wisdom, again, it will lead you now to chi. So, going now to the uh, four uh, four pre-self or potential self na characteristics daw na meron tayo according to the Confucian philosophy, which is again heart of compassion, heart which is Jen, heart of righteousness that leads to Yi, heart of propriety that leads to Li, and heart of wisdom that leads to Chi. All these four are perfection of virtues that exist in the human heart from beginning as potentials. Kaya to potential kasi it's already there when we are born. Ang problema lang is kung paano ng isang tao isasabuhay itong meron na tayo na characteristics as part of the potential self. Since we're in Confucianism, again, remember, the goal is for you to attain that moral excellence. And para ma-attain tong moral excellence na to, may potential na tayong lahat. We as individuals, may potential tayo to become great. Nasa sa atin lang yun kung paano natin ipapractice. That can lead to us acquiring that as our virtue. Personality, okay, we already have mentioned this. And yung pagbuo natin kasi ng personality, again, for the perception of the Confucian philosophy, it is something na kailangan ma-attain natin through our journey or through our goal in achieving this moral excellence rather than a given human condition, something na binibigay lang or naaapektuhan lang tayo because of us being humans. Now, Confucianism, the self can never be static. We can never be stagnant. Hindi ka pwedeng mag-stop dyan. Kung ikaw ay isang tao na feeling mo okay ka na, hindi, okay lang ako sa ganitong lagay. Hindi ka masyado nangingialam sa ibang tao, okay ka, chill ka lang na nasa gitna ka lang, ang perception sa Confucianism, hindi ka pwede na mag-retain ka lang sa ganong estado or sa ganong self mo. You can never be complacent. You should not stop developing and growing into becoming a better person. So to be human, it means develop and to keep pursuing the virtues. And it is a conscious effort, yun yung term. Conscious effort or decision of a person into practicing the virtues. So, if ikaw gusto mo maging mabuting tao, so, ang magiging basihan nito is tumutulong ka sa ibang tao. So dahil nga nakagawian mo na ang pagtulong sa ibang tao, it's a conscious effort on you trying to build that virtue. But eventually, because it already has been built within you, that it is already your virtue to help other people, to to be someone that other people can rely to. So, it now becomes unconscious kasi kahit na hindi mo na nga siya pinag-iisipan, kusa na lang siyang lumalabas. Parang yung body mo is natural na lang siya. May makita kang matandang nahihirapan magdala ng maraming mga bitbitin because it already has been a virtue of yours. No, may certain reaction ka na, natutulungan mo yung matanda kahit walang nagsasabi sa'yo. It's because again, na-embed na sa'yo yung virtue na yun. Now, the dynamic has integrated into the nature of self and has become the self. So, dahil nga yung mga continuous mo na improvement and development, yung mga pagbabago mo, yung attaining that moral excellence, dahil ngayon naging isa na siya sa personality mo, naging natural na naman siya na part ng self mo. And because of that, unconsciously, patuloy mo lang siyang ginagawa without you even thinking if dapat mo siyang gawin or hindi. Kasi you know to yourself that you really, you, you, you know to yourself because of that practice for it to become a virtue, then nagiging something na siya na nasa'yo na. So, minsan uncontrollable na siya, kusa na lang siya talaga na kumikilos yung katawan mo based sa pangangailangan ng iba. And that is confusionism. Yung, for you to develop yourself, you also need to continuously progress and develop. And you need others. You, dito sa dito sa Hindu philosophy, well specifically sa Confucian philosophy, you actually need others in order for you to attain this moral excellence. Bakit? Yun yung gusto kong magandang itanong sa inyo. Bakit kailangan ng ibang tao for you to achieve this moral excellence? Okay. Huh? So before we proceed to the Western philosophy, let's just have a quick break and I will stop the recording. You can check the next recording for the Western philosophy because again, it's quite lengthy. Mas mahaba ang Western philosophy in comparison to the Eastern philosophy, but both are very important and substantial for you to help reflect and realize about yourself when we speak of the philosophical self. So, dahil sa discussion natin, I do hope that you are able to understand what we meant or what the contributions of the Eastern philosophy when we speak of understanding the self. Now, it is close to our heart because again, we're Asians. And nakaka-relate tayo sa konsepto ng Eastern philosophy because nakagisnan natin. Madalas or karamihan sa atin, alam yung konsepto na to kasi yung paraan ng pagpapalaki sa atin ng ating mga magulang ay malapit sa konsepto ng Eastern philosophy. So I do hope that you are able to understand the the discussion or the lecture. This is a lecture more of me trying to inform you of what these concepts of Eastern philosophy and also the concepts of the self. And ituloy lang natin sa next uh, recording natin kung ano naman yung mga Western philosophy. And I hope you also will find that very interesting. More discussion on our synchronous class and see you guys. Thank you.